We can get started. Um, Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Brian Garcia. I'm the Family Engagement Liaison, and today we'll be talking about CPDP. And I'll let our experts introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, my name is Ezra Miller, he, him, and I am the IB Diploma Program Coordinator here at DCI.
I'm Shane Donovan, also he, him, and run the CP, career-related program, and the classes in younger grades that feed in.
And the focus of our presentation this evening is going to be about explaining the different pathways and avenues available for students. When they reach 11th grade, they will enroll in either the IB Diploma Program or the IB Career-Related Program. So this session is going to be probably most helpful if you are a 10th grade parent, or if you're a parent with a student in grades 6 through 9 and you're already thinking ahead about options for high school. This is going to give you sort of an overview of what those final 2 years of high school are like. As a heads up, this is the same version of the presentation that Shane and I give in 10th grade English classes. We've already scheduled our presentations for the end of January, the very beginning of second semester. So we will be delivering a version of this directly to students after winter break, but you get the preview of it this evening. And the goal is really to help people understand both the unique aspects of each of the two programs, but also a lot of the ways in which there is significant overlap in what students do, whether they choose diploma program or career-related program, the excellent educational experience they'll have in their final 2 years at DCI in 11th and 12th grade. So the first thing that is really important to know is when people think about diploma program versus career-related program, sometimes there are assumptions, associations that people might have with those terms, which we'll talk a little bit more about later on. But at DCI, no matter which program students pick, a lot of the classes on their schedule actually end up being the exact same, no matter which program they choose. So everyone at DCI in 11th and 12th grade takes a class labeled DP English. Everyone takes a DP language class, either French, Spanish, or Chinese. Everyone takes a DP history class. Everyone takes at least one DP science class. Everyone takes a DP math class, no matter which of the two programs they opt into. The remaining classes a student takes will be a little bit more dependent on which of the programs they choose and what pathways within that program. But at least five of the classes that students take in 11th and 12th grade are not specific to DP or CP. So there's a lot that students have in common no matter which path they choose, what program they're in. They're doing a lot of the same coursework no matter what.
The second bit of context that applies to all students in almost all classes is that those five DP courses come in versions called standard level or higher level. We have a few classes that are only offered at standard level. You'll notice that as we go along, we'll explain why. But mostly a standard level DP class. I liken it to sort of two scoops of ice cream on the right there, right? The HL version of the class has those same two scoops plus a third scoop. So there's extra content. And so therefore the HL classes have to go faster because they're doing extra content in the same 2 year period. And then they also usually have an extra assessment task. When it comes time for exams, they do some extra bit of exam to account for that extra content that is in the HL class. And so we advise students to think about choosing classes that they want to HL in that they either really enjoy or feel really confident in, or both. If you're neither of those things, you probably shouldn't do that class HL. But if you're at least one of those things, considering doing an HL class is maybe a good option for you.
And there are slightly different requirements in terms of how many higher level versus standard level classes a student takes, depending on which of the program paths they choose. So if a student picks the IB diploma program, there is a requirement set by IB that they have to take at least 3 higher level classes, although some students will opt to challenge themselves and take on a fourth higher level class. But at a minimum, all DP students have to do at least 3 classes at the higher level.
On the CP side, there is more flexibility there. We have decided at DCI that everyone takes higher level English. So you're definitely taking one because everyone does HL English. And then a lot of CP students take two because their career-related studies class kind of acts like the third one. But you can take three or you can take four HLs if you want to. CP has the flexibility for how many you want to take. One additional thing, so I mentioned this, that why choose HLs besides just pushing yourself academically? Um, College credits for IB scores depend on policies that vary school to school. So we cannot say if you get this grade in this class, you'll definitely get free credit from all schools. It's school to school, just like it is for AP. But it is generally true that classes that you do HL, you're more likely to get college credit in those courses. So there are some schools that say we only give credit for HLs, and some say, if you took HL English, you can get a 4, but if you took SL, you need to get a 5. Obviously, at 10th grade, you're not like locked in on what kind of post-secondary schooling you might want to do. So this can't really inform your decisions, except that you should take as many as you can reasonably handle and play to your strengths. There is one exception, which is certainly worth mentioning here. If you are seriously considering going to college outside of America, those schools will admit IB students preferentially, which is great. But they often have very specific requirements about the classes you need to take. Like if you want to study physics at Oxford in England, like it will say, we accept IB students if they took higher level math, higher level physics, and they got scores of such and such and such thing. So we remind you that if you're seriously considering going to school abroad, at the 10th grade moment, we should look at the websites of those schools and see what policies they have and try and get your kids enrolled in classes that at least keep those doors open for you for the future. You don't have to go through them, but we want to keep the doors open. And we have helped students think this through in the past. We've had students go to school in Canada and Japan, various other parts in Europe as well.
So we're now going to talk about what options are available within the different courses that students take. Like we said, there are a set number of classes, at least 5, that are going to be basically the same no matter which of the 2 program paths. And then a little bit later in the presentation, we'll start breaking down the things that are more specific and unique to DP versus CP. So the first class, like Mr. Donovan mentioned a moment ago, is higher level English. And every single student in 11th and 12th grade at DCI does English at the higher level. We opt for the language and literature class, which is sort of a hybrid of the more traditional literary study that many of us are familiar with from our own high school experience, but also brings in the opportunity to study other types of non-literary texts, things like political cartoons, films, music videos, opinion columns from newspapers. So it's a class that gives students the chance to look at a lot of different literary forms, a lot of different text types, and really think about how literary and non-literary writing and creation is influenced by identity and culture. It's a really great class, and the reason we have everyone do it at the higher level is because this is a class that we have a very high rate of success in the higher level version of the course, and it is also the class that students are most likely able to earn college credit for once they leave DCI. So every single student does higher level English. This is not a space where there actually is any choice for students. So everyone in 11 and 12 does higher level English A, language and literature. In terms of the language class that they take, either Chinese, French, or Spanish, there is a wider range of options, which is really designed to make sure that we have students at varying levels of proficiency and fluency in our languages, especially when we consider that some students at DCI have been studying their language since they were in pre-K. Other students might have come to DCI in 9th grade and have much less experience in the language. So we have a lot of different options for what languages students can take. So for all 3 of our language tracks, we have what's known as the ab initio version of the class. So the ab initio version is considered a standard level class by IB, and it's a class that's really geared toward beginners in the language study. So if you only have been taking the language for a year or 2, if you're at a very novice level, the ab initio course is going to be designed for like a little bit more foundational work with building vocabulary and grammar skills, because it's not going to assume that you come in having already completed years and years of study. We also have both the standard level and higher level version of like the language B course in all 3 language tracks. So the standard level Spanish B, French B, or Chinese B is going to assume a slightly higher and more advanced level of proficiency than students who are at the ab initio level. So this would be more so like maybe you came to DCI in middle school, you only have a few more years of language study. And these classes are going to focus a lot on like cultural context and understanding various aspects, not just of the language itself, but also understanding the different parts of the world in which the language is spoken, different cultural traditions that are associated with the language. And then the higher level version of Spanish B, French B, and Chinese B is going to push students a little bit further, and that's where students are also going to work on some literature study as well. So if a student is in higher level Spanish B, French B, or Chinese B, in addition to building grammar and vocabulary skills, they are also going to study at least two works of literature written in the target language if they're in the higher level B version of those languages. Then above that, for some of our students, especially if they went to Stokes for elementary school, or if they went to DC Bilingual or Mundo Verde in elementary, we also offer in the Spanish and French tracks the language and literature course. So this class is essentially the exact same type of work that students are doing in the English language class that they're taking, but they're doing it in the target language. So if a student is extremely advanced in terms of their reading and writing abilities, their speaking and listening abilities, they might opt in for Spanish A language and literature or French A language and literature. Those courses are going to involve significantly more study of literary works. It's going to involve a lot more writing. A lot more essays will be produced in the target language. And if a student is sufficiently advanced in their studies in Spanish or French, that can also qualify them if they're in that class for the bilingual IB diploma by the end of senior year. You will notice that we do not currently offer the language and literature version of the Chinese class. That's partly because learning Chinese is a very different undertaking than learning Spanish or French. So because of that, we are not yet able to prepare students at quite the level that they would need to be successful in the language and literature version. Um, but no matter what language track they are in, all students at DCI are potentially eligible to earn the seal of biliteracy when they graduate, depending on whichever language class they might pick. And because there are so many different levels to choose from, especially in the Spanish and French tracks, we try to set it up so that students get really clear guidance from the language teachers about what class might be the best fit. So we work closely with the language team to make sure that students are making an informed decision about what language they want to commit to studying for their final 2 years of high school. And like I said, depending on how advanced they are, especially in Spanish or French, they can potentially get up to the point of earning the bilingual IB diploma. The next choice students have to make is a little bit more straightforward. When it comes to the history offerings, there are just two choices. Students can take either the higher level History of the Americas course, which is going to focus not just on US history, but also looking at sort of our whole hemisphere. So thinking about relations with Latin America, with Canada, so the entire hemisphere. Or if they choose the standard level version of the history course, it is a little bit more oriented toward a world history type class. And again, when students are making this decision, like Mr. Donovan was sharing before, it's really important to think about what are their strengths, what are they passionate about. So if a student is, again, very strong in the humanities, in reading and writing, if they are very passionate about the study of history or think they might want to eventually go into a field potentially connected to history or historical research, the higher level version of the class can be a really good fit. That tends to be a very, very popular course, but we do offer history at both higher level and standard level. And then I'll turn it over to Mr. Donovan to talk about some of our science offerings, and I'll get to some of the questions that were just dropped in the chat.
Yeah, so for science, it's a little more like language where we have a variety of subjects to choose from and then also levels. So starting at the top, we have biology, the study of living things at higher and standard. Again, differences being extra content and higher. We have chemistry, and students by 10th grade have taken bio and they've taken chem, so they kind of know those subjects a little bit. Then we have environmental systems and societies, and so that's an environmental science course talking about sort of human interactions with the environment, natural systems, and how we hopefully can slow down the degradation of our planet. We have physics, the study of matter and energy, the structure of the universe at higher level and standard. Some students take physics in 9th or 10th grade, but not all by choice. And then the last one, sports, exercise, health science. That is a combo of biochemistry and physics applied to human body health and athletic performance. So like you learn physics because you learn about biomechanics and like how to throw a javelin properly. You learn chemistry because you learn about nutrition, right? You learn all kinds of biology about cells and respiration, but it's focused on human body health and athletic performance. So it's a very popular course for students that are really interested in sports or thinking about doing athletic training or health sciences. That class, we only offer it at SL because to do it at HL, you need like crazy IMG Academy sports biometric measuring equipment that we don't have in our building. But those are the science options. Students will all take at least one of these, and they might take two. We'll get into that later. You could take two sciences. Another decision point for students around what science is like, how much math is in my science, is often a factor for students. And I would say ESS is probably the least mathy. SEHS and bio would be sort of next mathy, right? And then chemistry and physics are the most mathematical. So students with really strong math skills probably take any science and feel fine. But if you're a little bit nervous about math, you might want to look at sports exercise or environmental, because there's a little bit more conceptual understanding, a little bit more vocabulary based, and less hard computation. And then math, we have two math classes that are each at the standard and the higher level. So the first math class is called Math AI, Applications and Interpretation. That is applied math. So all of the math, and you can see in the sort of row down, algebra functions, on the blue side, geometry, the math is all taught in the context of something real. So we'll show you an example math problem in a second to give you a sense of that. Calculators are allowed. Students almost always have a calculator. Any DCI 10th grader would be ready to do Math AI SL, and it is the most commonly chosen math class. Okay. Math AI, but HL has all the same content as SL, plus it's got more statistics, and it's got graph theory and matrices, so some linear algebra, complex numbers, vectors, and more calculus, right? It's also, because it's applied math, you're using a calculator if you need to, because you're working with measured numbers, right? You should feel confident with algebra, and probably it's for students who are in IM3 or are excelling in IM2 and are sort of ready for a challenge. So that's Math AI, applied math. Then we have Math AA, pure math, okay? Math AA SL, you can see the content underneath, right? Geometry, prob stats, calculus, number, and algebra. The difference is that it is pure math. So sometimes the math is not presented in the context of something real. It's math for its own sake that's got more sort of advanced math applications. And sometimes you don't get a calculator, right? You're expected to be able to do some things with no calculator help. And that's recommended for students who are in IM3 right now. Then we have AA higher level. That's the sort of most abstract pure math class we've got. It's all the AA SL content plus complex numbers, proofs, vectors, and more calculus. And that is probably for students who are in IM3 and feeling great about it. Ultimately, we do let students choose any of the four math classes. But, you know, if a student is in IM2 and doesn't really like math very much, and they say they want to do higher level math, we'll talk to them and say, are you sure? Right? If you are excited about the challenge and you really want to do it, great. But if you're not prepared or you're setting yourself up to have a really bad time, we might talk to them about what they're thinking about.
There was a question here. Sorry, I don't know if you answered it. The question was, is higher level viewed as AP level?
Yep, I answered that in the chat. So students can potentially earn college credit for either a higher level or a standard level class. It's hard to say universally because every college and university has its own policies regarding that. So in general, though, higher level classes are the ones that they are more likely to earn college credit for, although some institutions will give credit for standard level as well. So similar to, you know, different colleges and universities have different policies about what score a student needs to earn on an AP test to get credit. They also have different policies about what scores students need for either HL or SL classes. So it is very dependent on what schools a student might be interested in going to. I know, for instance, George Mason University tends to offer credit for both higher level and standard level. There are other schools, though, that tend to prefer to give credit only for higher level. So it does vary a lot by institution. So as we were saying earlier, the important thing to note is no matter which of these two program tracks a student might be interested in, those 5 courses that we just did the overview of, students in DP and CP will be completely mixed together in those classes. So we don't have like a section of DP English that's only for diploma program students and a section of DP history that's only for CP students. Students are fully mixed together, completely integrated in those core subject areas. So for at least 5 out of the 8 blocks in their schedule, DP and CP students will be learning alongside one another. The other classes that they take, though, are the ones that are more specific to the program. So with that, we're now going to dive into some of the more unique differences and options available if a student chooses DP and or what's available if they choose CP instead.
All right. On the CP side, your sixth class is what we call your career-related studies class from our four career and technical education pathways. And we have four options there. Robotics engineering, which is the newest pathway, but growing very quickly. Computer science, which we've had since the beginning. So software and also the implications of computing. Media production. So if you follow DCI, they make Dragon TV, and they also make all kinds of other media products that air on PBS and all kinds of other things like that. And then health sciences, where we specialize in nursing skills. So CP students, I say, look, if one of those four things sound interesting to you, you should seriously consider being part of our program. If you don't like the sound of any of those things, then you shouldn't do it. The seventh class, our timing is just right, I think, for Mr. Townsend, just barely. The seventh class, the core class for CP students is called Personal and Professional Skills. Our teacher for the year 2 of that class is here, so I'm going to pass Mike and let him talk about PPS.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mr. Townsend. Like Mr. Donovan said, I teach the second year of personal professional skills, and it is the kind of class where we like to think you're learning all of these career related skills. And this is, the class that teaches you how to get into that spot in the first place, how to interview well, make sure your resume is set up. One of the favorite things that our kids do during year 1 is there is a whole class dedicated to learning how to tie a tie. It's always a very interesting day whenever we give that lesson. And then also in year 1, that is when they start their reflective project, which is that dot you see at the bottom of the screen. That is their big sort of capstone project they do when they go CP. And in the reflective project, it is essentially a big research paper about an ethical dilemma in their career related area of study. So a lot of our health sciences kids, they might do things related to medical aid in dying or abortion. The media production kids might do like photo manipulation or AI script writers for movies. Computer science kids do a lot with chat GPT, which is an omnipresent conversation with them. And then robotics engineering kids, the closest thing I can think of off the top of my head is I had a senior last year who's currently at the Coast Guard Academy, and his reflective project was related to cybernetic enhancement for soldiers. So you have this research paper where you dive into how do people think about it, what are people saying, how does it show up in the real world, and then you have to present a feasible solution to how we could work around and live with this. That is the sort of big crux of what we do in PPS. The other part that's not on this page, it might be on another one, I'm not sure, is this thing called service learning, which I believe for the junior classes community engagement. And it is essentially a more involved, reflective, deep process of getting involved in your community or community service. So right now, my seniors are working on their SL2 experience, their second one of the year, where they are being tasked to work with a partner that's also in the cohort and go out into the community and do some positive change. I have kids that I think this weekend are going to do 2 days of service that so others might eat. I know some kids, at least they have told me, are potentially signing up for Mr. Donovan's robotics tournament to help kind of spur there you go, to help spur that growth of like CTE and STEM education in kids. So that is how that also shows up. But yeah, that's my class. And in year 2, that is when they finish their reflective project. Sorry about that. And then also during that time, we'll talk about public speaking is what we're doing right now for the month of December. We also do financial literacy skills and that interpersonal awareness, self-care that all of us so desperately need to get better at.
And then if students opt for the diploma program, instead of the career-related study class that CP students take, they will pick a sixth DP elective class, and they have a lot of different choices for what that elective could be. So similar to what Mr. Donovan was saying, we really recommend when students are thinking about, do I want DP versus CP? It's really a matter of like, what do you want the extra thing on your schedule? We know everyone takes English, everyone takes history, everyone takes language, etc. What do you want the special extra thing on your schedule to be, and does it fit better within the diploma program or the career-related program? So the sixth class for DP could be a second language if a student's already enrolled, for instance, in the French and Spanish tracks or the Chinese and Spanish. They could do a second language class. If they are really passionate about the sciences and they're interested in doing both biology and chemistry, or they want to do environmental science and physics, they could sign up for a second science class as their DP elective. And then we also have a few other options that are a little more specific to DP. So these classes tend to be entirely diploma program students, although we occasionally will have CP students will drop a study hall in order to enroll in a bonus class. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. But students could sign up for DP Global Politics if they're really interested in international relations and diplomacy. We have the DP Philosophy class, which is all about sort of understanding these big, broad questions about what does it mean to be human? What is the meaning of life? They do a lot of reading of like classic texts like Plato's Republic. We have DP Psychology if students want to take a more scientific look at the study of human behavior to better understand human emotions, decision making, how we relate to others. The psychology class tends to be very popular each year. And then we also have a variety of offerings in the arts that students can take in the diploma program. So if you have a student who is a really, really creative person who really needs a kind of artistic outlet in order to feel fulfilled, they might want to consider a diploma program with either the DP film class, which is more so focused on how to analyze and interpret film as an art form. It does involve some technical filmmaking skill, similar to what students might learn in the media production track for CP, but it does look a little bit more at some of the artistic elements of film as well. For students who play an instrument or are very advanced and passionate about music, we offer the DP Music class, currently only at the standard level because this is a relatively new class for us at DCI, but DP Music is an option. We also have DP Theater, which tends to be popular with students who are involved in the theater program here at DCI. So if they were part of Alice by Heart, or if they participated in the musicals when they were in middle school, DP Theater could be a great option for students who really enjoy performing and acting. And then we have the more traditional DP Visual Arts class as well. So more typical art forms, drawing, painting, sculpture, those sorts of things. Our students who do the DP Arts put on an amazing exhibition at the end of the year every year where they show off the really incredible portfolio of work that they've produced. So if you have a student who is artistically inclined, they very much might want to consider the diploma program. And then the seventh class that DP students take, this is the counterpart of the personal and professional skills class for CP, is called Theory of Knowledge. This class tends to be a little bit more abstract, theoretical, philosophical, because it's all centered on this question of how do we know what we know? So it's a class that does a lot of critical thinking about sort of the underpinnings and foundations of knowledge in different areas. So students think about what knowledge looks like in different disciplines, like what does it mean to know something in the natural sciences, different from what a historian knows in history, different from what knowledge we gain in the arts. So it's a really cool opportunity for students to make interdisciplinary connections between the other classes they're taking and really learn to sort of develop their own ideas and perspectives on what it really means to know something and to know something, for instance, with certainty or not. It's a really great experience that, again, if you're a student, even if they're not going to take the DP philosophy class, if they like those kind of big, abstract, conceptual questions, TOK gives them a really great opportunity to think about not just accepting the things that their teachers tell them in history or tell them in chemistry, but really come to better understand what is the work that a scientist does? What is it that a historian does to write history? And then the big research project that students do for the diploma program, this is the counterpart to the reflective project that Mr. Townsend spoke about before, is called the extended essay. This is a 4,000 word research paper that students write over the course of a full year. They start it in the winter of 11th grade, they finish it in the winter of 12th grade. And students for the extended essay have the opportunity to choose a research question related to one of their academic fields that they are studying. And with support from a faculty supervisor, they conduct research and then write a lengthy paper in which they are able to develop an argument. So demonstrate critical thinking skills, research skills, and develop a line of argumentation in order to produce a piece of writing that is in many ways excellent preparation for the kind of thesis that many students don't write until the end of their college experience. So the extended essay is sort of like a miniature version of that type of senior thesis that many of us might have written in our own college experience. It's excellent preparation for college level research and writing. So we're now going to walk you through a couple possible sample schedules of what students might choose and what a schedule might look like that fits the requirements of either DP or CP. So here we have a sample schedule of a student who selects the diploma program. You'll notice looking at their schedule that they have a total of 6 DP classes: English, Chinese, history, environmental science, math, analysis and approaches, and psychology. They are doing at least 3 higher level classes with English, history, and psychology, and they also take theory of knowledge as the core class for the IB diploma. We have the majority of students, I would say, in 11th and 12th grade. The eighth period on their schedule usually tends to be a study hall. We find this is helpful for students because sometimes the jump in the rigor of the coursework going from 10th grade into 11th grade, where almost all the classes are college preparatory credit-bearing courses, students find it very helpful to have a little bit of extra time in their schedule where they can catch up on homework, study for exams, meet with teachers for support. So we'll have a lot of students who will have that eighth block as a study hall, which they find really, really helpful to keep up with the demands of the program.
Sample CP schedule. So the purple classes are the CP specific ones. You can see this is someone who's into STEM, computer science. They take PPS, which is the core class. And this is a CP student who chose 3 HLs anyways, English, math, and physics, SL in French and history. And this is also someone who chose the study hall. That is the most common route for what to do with your 8th class, to keep the study hall.
But we also have some students who have a really hard time choosing between diploma program and career-related program because we have really incredible opportunities and options in both program tracks. So there is a possibility students can kind of have it all. They can have the best of both worlds. So if they do want to do diploma program, but they're really passionate about one of the CP pathways, a student could potentially give up their study hall and take a CP class as that eighth class. So for example, here we have a student schedule. This is a student who in the diploma program challenged themselves with 4 HL classes. So English, Spanish language and literature, chemistry and film. Standard level, they took history and the applied math class. They have theory of knowledge as the core class for DP. But then instead of a study hall, they decided to pursue the video production, advanced video production in the media pathway for CP. So if a student really wants to do elements of both programs, they could drop the study hall in order to still participate and have some experience that aligns with the other program.
Okay, sorry, answering a chat question sidebar. Some CP students also decide to drop the study hall. Some CP students drop the study hall to take another CP class, like they do 2 CP pathways. The example here is someone who's like really into health sciences. So they drop their study hall to add yet another science. So they've got the health sciences anatomy class, they've got biology as their regular science, and then even more science with sports exercise. Yeah, we have we've done this many times now, and so we have a couple of like common misconceptions that we've heard people say that we figure we should just address up front because it can kind of make things smoother. The first one is that career program, because it sounds like vocational education, and that has vestiges of class bias and other biases, right, baked into it. They think it's the easy one. I don't think computer science, engineering, media production, or health sciences is certainly easier than any of the other DP options. I think if you walked into your doctor's office and said, thank goodness you did the easy classes, like that might not go so well for you, right? Working in these fields is challenging. It's fun, right? So we've picked pathways that can take you straight into the workforce if you want, or you can continue in post-secondary. That's why DCI chose the pathways that we chose.
On the flip side, there is sort of this impression that exists in the community that the IB diploma program is an impossibly difficult pathway. And that's also not at all true. It is very, very possible for students to be extremely successful in the diploma program without necessarily being good at every single thing that they try. Sometimes people think, oh, if I don't have 7s in every class, then I couldn't do the diploma program. That's not true. IB does not expect you to be great at everything. What's important is that the IB diploma program offers students a chance for a balanced education. So the things that students are really good at can help make up for things that might be more challenging for them. So, in fact, these numbers need to be updated, but the class of 2024 that graduated not this past year, but the year before, more than half of the DP candidates in that class earned the IB diploma. This past year, students in the class of 2025, it was 40% of students in that class earned the IB diploma. So it is a lot of work. It is not easy by any means, but it is also not impossibly difficult. But no matter what, a student could still get the IB diploma even if they don't pass every exam for every subject. And also, students can still earn college credit for the classes that they take if they do well on individual exams, even if they don't get the full IB diploma at the end of the day. We have lots of students each year who, even if they miss the IB diploma by a point or two, still go on to college and earn a tremendous amount of credit from post-secondary institutions because of the performance that they have on their IB exams.
On the college front, again, because of the assumptions about CP, folks assume, oh, CP is not college preparatory or colleges think it's less valuable. So our CP students attend 2 and 4 year college at a very similar rate to our DP students. The one difference is CP students often, they really like their career related study. And so they're slightly more likely to like want to specialize earlier. So, maybe they go to a 2 year nursing school because they liked the health sciences thing and they want to do that. And so they make their specialization choice maybe slightly earlier than DP students that have stayed in the liberal arts space a little longer, right? And then on the college acceptance front, colleges accept you based on your transcript, the classes you've taken and the grades you've earned. So remember that every student at our school is taking college level English, math, language, science, history, right? And then, some of them are taking computer science and some of them are taking psychology, but both of those are plenty rigorous things. And it's not like one is perceived categorically as better than the other. In addition, it's based on the classes you're in, right? Your performance on all the exams at the end is kind of a bonus because you get into college in January, February, March. You don't take your exams until May.
And sort of along that same idea, there is the impression some people think that the diploma program is the one that colleges prefer, that only colleges are going to look at DP students rather than CP students. That is not the case, particularly for American colleges and universities. So if a student, like Mr. Donovan was saying earlier, is particularly focused on a college or university outside of the US, in Europe or Canada, for instance, sometimes international schools do require the diploma program as opposed to the career-related program. But if we're talking about American colleges and universities, what really matters is how students are performing in the classes that they take. American colleges and universities are not pressed about DP versus CP the way that we might think that they are. The way that we've developed our CP program at DCI, it has the same level of rigor as our IB diploma program. Students are taking at least 5 college level courses if they're doing CP, just like they're doing 6 college level courses if they're doing DP. And what matters at the end of the day is how they perform on the exams for those subjects. College credit is going to be determined by exam scores, not by whether a student has the IB diploma or the CP certificate. So even though, again, the connotations people might have with career-related versus diploma, that does not actually pan out in terms of how college admissions work, and also in terms of how college credit is assigned. We have DP and CP students are accepted to many of the same institutions in the US. We have students earning credit for the same courses, no matter which of the programs that they picked. So we sometimes might imagine there's a greater difference. American colleges and universities view the programs equivalently. So with that, we've been talking at you for a while now. We've been answering some questions in the chat sort of periodically as we've been going through, but we want to open up the floor now for any additional questions that you might have. You can drop them in the chat. You could unmute yourself to ask. We've also displayed our email addresses up here on the screen if you want to get in touch with us directly. So again, I am ezra.miller@dcinternationalschool.org. Mr. Donovan is shane.donovan@dcinternationalschool.org. But yeah, we'd like to open it up for additional questions you might have about the program pathways that are available.
I just responded in the chat, but I think it's a good wondering of like, oh, the pathways aren't that different, so why are they separated at all? They could be very different. We have just made a choice to run our CP program almost exactly like our DP program. So like Other schools, you actually only have to take 2 diploma classes in if you're doing CP by like IB rules, but we are IB for all, so we said no, we're doing it very similarly, and that's why they have so many classes that are in common. But yeah, the career related studies class is different from the group 6 class, and those are the career related studies pathways are designed to be more open because like there are schools that do all kinds of things. There's culinary institutions, automotive mechanic, HVAC, plumbing, right? Depending on your local context, schools have all sorts of career related studies pathways. The professional ethics, though, is in that's a core thing. You have to do that part. So PPS, talking about the ethics of your career path, is in the CP for that exact reason that's critical to the program.
Uh, Alexa, I see that you have your hand raised. You can feel free to unmute yourself and ask.
Okay, thank you. I have a 10th grader and a 7th grader, so this is timely and appreciated conversation. I think the question I have is about this like 50% of students earned the IB diploma. So is that 50% of all students or 50% of those in the DP track? And then is it like 100% of students in the CP track get the certificate and only some percentage of students in the DP track get the diploma? And for those who don't, like, what's the implication?
So the number I referenced earlier, depending on which program they're in, they're eligible for the 2 different awards. So for a student to earn the IB diploma, they have to be in the IB diploma program. They have to be on the DP track. So when we say 50% of students earned the IB diploma, we're referring to the 50% of students who were in the DP track.
Okay, so if last year was 40, most of the students in the DP track don't earn the IB diploma. And then what is it on the CP side?
CP side slightly higher. It's been as high as like high 60s down to like mid 50s or early 40s, depending on the cohort. In order to earn the full certification in either program, you need to get certain scores on all your exams. You need to write this essay, extended essay or reflective project essay to a certain standard. You have to sort of do everything for every component of all the coursework. And so if you do all the things, you will get this nice paper from IB that's on nice blue seal with a stamp on it and signatures of people at The Hague, right? And so for some, if you really want to go to a school in Europe or Canada or Australia, that may be extremely important for you that you earn it because they may only admit you if you have that thing. Those schools also then admit you and they charge you way less than schools here do, right? So for some students, they have to earn the full certification and it's really important. But if you're going to an American school, it's not that important that you earn the full cert. Most American schools give you a la carte credit for individual courses that you individually, you could get like a bunch of 2s, but if you got a 6 in HL English and you go to U Maryland, they'll give you credit in English class. Just a la carte for whatever classes you did well in. And so while it is challenging, certainly to earn the full cert from IB, the predictive power of being in the program, like being in the program and engaging in good faith with all the hard stuff we ask you to do is actually what leads to success in undergrad. So we've had lots of students who've graduated from here who have said, I didn't earn the full IB situation, but I showed up at college and the classwork was easy. Right? Like I felt prepared. I felt excited. They say, I wish maybe if I'd, worked a little harder in high school, I could have gotten a free credit out of DCI, and they kind of joke about it, right? But it's an icing on the cake thing, that earning the full credential. Obviously, we'd like lots of kids to earn the full credential. That's part of our coaching work with teachers, but we know that they get a lot of value out of the program, even if they don't check every single box.
And as I mentioned earlier too, even if a student, for instance, the IB diploma has like a very long list of very specific requirements that have to be met in terms of the scores for both higher level and standard level classes, and then several other criteria that need to be met. We have a separate presentation that goes over the details of that. We delivered it actually as a separate Cafe Charla event a few weeks ago. But as I mentioned, even if a student doesn't have the full IB diploma, we still have the majority of our students do graduate having earned a college credit bearing score in one or more of their DP subjects. So remember that, especially for American colleges and universities, what determines earning college credit is not whether or not you have the IB diploma, it's how you performed in the exams for the individual IB classes that you took. So we do have students, the vast majority are earning scores that would qualify them for college credit, even if they're not necessarily meeting every single one of the criteria that's necessary for the IB diploma and or the CP certificate.
Um, oh, did you have anything else to say, Alexa?
No, I was just gonna extend that, I guess, if there are colleges or universities abroad that kids are interested in, and they do require the actual certificate, the diploma or the certification, then like the college counselors make the kids aware of that. Like, you will only be accepted to this school if you have that thing.
Yeah, what they will often, if they're applying to schools internationally, it's what they'll be offered what's known as conditional acceptance, which they'll say, we are based on your transcript and your profile and your recommendations, we are going to conditionally accept you, but that's going to be contingent on the exam scores we get once scores are released in July after you've graduated. That's when we'll know for certain whether or not you'll be able to matriculate. And that is something that is clearly communicated as part of both the work that Mr. Donovan and I do when we work with students in 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, and then also the work they get with the college counseling department as well.
Okay, thank you.
There was a chat question about like parent involvement in the choosing. Like, absolutely yes. Like, that's why we're doing this for you guys, so you know. But like, if you have a 10th grader, they will get this exact same presentation, and then they will have this little document where they indicate what they think they'd like to choose. We require them to share it with you. The first thing it says is share this with your family. We check that they shared it with you.
Bold, highlighted in yellow, like please
So they
share
come
this with
talk to
someone
us,
at
right?
home.
Yeah, and you know, we want you to have time to chat it with them. You can talk to us directly about it. You know, of course, family preferences involved. Like, we want students to make choices based on their own experience, but like, you care about what's going on with them, so of course you're involved.
And then in terms of how student data factors into the class choices, the one thing that's very important to understand is that we do try to honor student choice and student agency in the selection process. So we, as a school, try to avoid as much as possible tracking. So we try to keep it so that students are able to choose what is the class that best fits their interests, their passions. There is a little bit more tracking involved, in particular because of the different levels for language and for math classes. But otherwise, we don't have a rule that says if you had this grade in English in ninth grade, or English isn't a good example, everyone takes higher level English, but we don't say if you had, below a 5 in history in ninth grade, that means you cannot do higher level history. We really try to set it so that students have as many options as possible available to them, and we really honor their knowledge of themselves and what they want to accomplish as being the main driving force in choosing what are the classes they're going to sign up for. So we absolutely do. One of the very first things we say to students when we begin the choice process is we ask them to directly share their documents with you as parents, families, guardians. We will also make sure that we are sending out information about the selection process when it goes underway. We'll be sending that primarily through Toddle is the easiest way for us to send out those notifications. But we will make sure that you are aware when students are beginning the process to actually make these selections so that you can follow up and have the discussions with them at home as well.
Veronica, feel free to unmute yourself to ask the question.
Yes. So for the kids dropping study hall and adding another class, you were saying before that a lot of people take study hall. So are there all the classes available during that 8th period, or or is it difficult to get to some classes? Uh, you choose.
So the sample schedules we showed you, they weren't like number periods in order. So like, there is a study hall every single period of the day, because every student in 11th and 12th, well, not every, but a lot of them take them. And so if students want to like drop their study hall to take a certain class, we actually build our schedule based on the preferences of 11th graders. This is why we ask them in December. So we take all the kids' preferences, including if they want to drop their study hall, and we actually use that to say what class should be in what period. And then after that, if kids want to change something, we say, okay, well, the classes are now in the periods they're in. Let's try and work around. We do have kids change a little bit in September of junior year, but we're trying to minimize that, right? This is why we want them to think about it and why they sort of try the classes in grade 9, 10 as much as possible. But there are some classes that are, less popular than others. Like there's less sections of them. And so those tend to be like the first rocks in a kid's schedule. Like there's only one period of math, AAHL. There's probably going to be one period of language and literature, French, right? There'll probably be one period of the most upper level engineering or media class. And so we know this. And so but if a lot of kids pick a pathway, then we'll just make more periods of those classes, right? And we figure out staffing as well based on what kids want. So, there is a little bit of getting into that class can be tricky for some students sometimes, but we usually build the schedule based on what kids want.
I see you have your hand raised again. You can just unmute yourself, Veronica.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah. So the other issue is for kids taking a third language, if they decide to go, because I asked for the question before. So if they are in the diploma program, that means that they cannot drop a study hall and go for another diploma program class, but they could take a CP class. But if they take the CP, being that the classes are very similar, except for the ones that are not, they could take the DP class. That seems to be a discouragement to take DP because it gives more options for CP students. There's no way that a DP kid can take an additional DP class.
The IB says you can only take 6 total.
And that's the maximum number, whether students in the diploma program or the career-related program. 6 is the maximum number they can take, both because of IB rules, and also we just find that it generally would not be sustainable for a student to take on that degree of coursework, given that these are all college preparatory classes that they could potentially earn college credit for. We would not be really setting students up for success if we allowed them to take as many as 7 of those classes. So whether DP or CP, the maximum number of the DP classes is 6. And there is sort of parity between the two programs in that sense.
We can get clever in sort of like talking with students about like the third language thing of like, is that like your most important criteria? In which case, like do DP and take it as your extra. Or if it's like, no, but I really, really, really like computer science or media or something, we can kind of play out different options and let them think about either one. Other folks, Ms. Gasol.
Elena, I see you have a question as well.
Thank you. It's actually a little bit of a follow-up to Veronica's and related to a question I had put in the chat earlier. If a kid wants to earn the bilingual diploma in Spanish, but is not in the Spanish track, related to Veronica's question in terms of having a third language when you're doing the diploma, how would that work? Would they have 2 tracks when they're doing the diploma? Can they have 2 tracks with 2 languages and the secondary one being the one they earn the bilingual diploma in?
So a student can only qualify for the bilingual diploma in one of the other language tracks. So a student could not take, and again, this is part of like the very specific IB rules and regulations. Students can take 2 classes they all have different group numbers associated with them. So group 1 is studies in language and literature. So that's the English class that everyone takes. And then if students are very advanced in Spanish or French, they could do Spanish language and literature or French language and literature. But even if they're advanced in both language tracks, they could not do all 3 language and literature classes. So they could say, I want to do Spanish language and literature and then higher level French B or vice versa. But they could not, because of the way that IB has set up the rules of the diploma program, they could not earn the trilingual IB diploma is not something that exists.
No, but in this case, because literature is not offered in Chinese, right? So
Correct.
my student is in the Chinese track. Could my student do the Chinese HL or SL and do literature in Spanish, the HL literature in Spanish? He has
If your student is already enrolled in both the Spanish and Chinese tracks currently, then they could potentially do that. We're not able to have students who are not already in a third language by 10th grade. They can't start a third language in 11th grade. You have to already have met the criteria to be in another language track. But if your student is already taking both Spanish and Chinese courses, they could potentially do the higher level Chinese class and then the Spanish language and literature class. That would be allowed.
but they would have to be enrolled by 10th grade.
They would have to already be in the third language track by 10th grade in order to do that, yes.
And that's part of that thing about enrolled in the language by 10th. That's because the way we admit students into our school by charter lottery has to do with the language track that you're in. And so there's a proportion of stuff that's admitted there. So like if we allowed students to just add or switch languages once they'd already got here, that would be sort of a way to quote unquote game the lottery. And as
Right.
you know, there's a lot of interest in enrolling here, and a lot of the spots get taken so early. So that's why we say you can't start a third language late. You've got to, decide you want to do it at a younger age, and then you're not gaming the lottery. You're doing it as a legitimate, thing of interest.
Right, right. I mean, in this case, it's because this literature is not offered in Chinese. My student would not be changing Chinese, would still be in Chinese, but he has the language level to do high HL Spanish anyways, even if he's not doing it in DCI. So yeah. But then he would have to enroll in by 10th grade, right?
Yes.
Okay, okay. And that's discussed with whom?
Your best option would be to reach out directly to your student's language teacher, and they can connect you with our language coordinators who can talk you through that process.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Okay.
But the only class that would be affected, as I understand, is the literature. With that one alone, they would qualify to take the bilingual exam?
To earn the bilingual IB diploma, they would have to be in either the Spanish A language and literature class or the French A language and literature class.
That's the only class that they
they
would have to
can,
take in the language?
pardon?
Is that the only class that they would have to take in the language?
To qualify for the bilingual, as long as they are fulfilling all of the other program requirements for a diploma program, as long as they're in the Spanish A or the French A class, that's the course that qualifies them for the bilingual diploma.
Okay, okay, thank you.
As a little point of clarity, actually, especially if your student is younger, in grade 11 and 12, the only classes that are not taught in English are the language classes. We're not doing like, younger grades like INS is in Spanish or whatever. We don't do that when the kids get older because the content is too complex. And so we teach everything in English except their language class. The other thing to this point is if your student's in 9th grade or 8th grade, we have exposure to our coursework options via the electives that exist in grade 9 and 10, especially on the CP side. So computer science 1, video 1, engineering 1, right? Health sciences 1. Those are all things that 9th graders and 10th graders can take, and then they can try the pathways, see if they like them. We have, of course, our arts programs in grade 9, 10 is a great taste of what DP arts would be like. And then we have a couple of other electives that are kind of tastes of. And so in the spring, when your student gets a form that says, what electives are you interested in? Looking at that with them and saying, hey, think about it. Do you want to taste something that you might try later? It's a good way to get exposure. We do have students, though, who take computer science for the first time in 11th grade, and they're happy with it, right? That is an option.
All right. It being 6:30, I guess we'll take Alexa's question, and then just so you all know, I will be sharing the presentation, and the session has been recorded, so I'll be able to share all of this with you all. So if there's any other questions that you have for Mr. Miller and Mr. Donovan, you'll have their emails, and you can feel free to send them an email whenever you like. Alexa.
Yeah, thanks. Just building off the last question. So checking understanding, to earn the bilingual diploma program, they have to take the Langlet in French or Spanish, and earn a particular score on the IB exam for that class. Is that right?
So yeah, the requirement is the IB exams are on a scale of 1 to 7, similar to how we do our grading. So they would have to earn a score of at least a 3 in the Spanish A language and literature or French A language and literature class, as well as meeting all of the other specific requirements for the IB diploma. So we will typically have students earn, if they earn the bilingual diploma, they are usually probably doing better than a 3 in that language class. But with part of it, it's sort of meeting all of the criteria for the IB diploma, and in the language and literature, French or Spanish class, getting at least a 3.
Okay, so they have to be one of those, that third 40 or 50% who earned the IB diploma and get above a certain score on that
Yes.
Langlit. What percentage of DCI students earn a bilingual diploma?
I know last year we had it was either 9 or 10 of the students who earned the IB diploma earned the bilingual IB diploma last year. It's hard to say what percentage wise, because the complicating factor is that only students who are in the Spanish language and literature or French language and literature class are eligible for the bilingual diploma. So even
Right.
though we have a higher number of DP candidates, the number of candidates for the bilingual diploma is substantially smaller. So I don't have that percentage off the top of my head.
Okay, but like 9 or 10 total last year. That's helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you.
you're welcome.
All right, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. Again, I'll be sharing the presentation and the recording of tonight's session with you all by the end of the week. Mr. Miller and Mr. Donovan, thank you so much for leading the presentation. Hope you all have a good night.